Hello, welcome to North Fulton Serves. My name is Jason Binder, and we're here to talk with people who are making a difference in their community and hopefully impassion others to work around North Fulton. Today I have with me my friend Larry Attig, and he's going to take us on a little bit, hopefully, of a history tour of Alpharetta and all the things that have gone on since his time that he's been here. So welcome today, Larry.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So I thought we'd start off with discussing your first business. I know you've had a couple businesses around here in Alpharetta. So when you first got started in Alpharetta, what was that and where were you?
I moved here in 1978, and so that makes me probably pretty ancient compared to a lot of the people in the area. And at that time, I opened up a riding stables out on State Bridge Road, which is now Old Milton Parkway. It's right across Big Creek. And at the time, I had had a stables in Virginia, and I had lost a lease there, so I decided I was going to pick up and move to a whole new area. So I was looking around, and I saw that Houston and Atlanta looked like the best places to do business. So I picked out.
I think you made the right choice there.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Houston probably now. I wouldn't want to be there, but I looked back in those days. We still had yellow page phone books. So I went to the library at the university and looked at the yellow pages and saw that there were no riding stables. There's one riding stable in the Atlanta area. So that was how I made my decision. So I came down here and I found about 100-acre farm. It used to be an old dairy farm just east of town. And so I brought 6 horses with me and just started from scratch and did rentals, boarding, training. And next thing I knew, I had about 60 horses. And so it was a very successful business. We were doing really well. And so I was leasing the property at the time. And so then the landlord, after a couple of years, said, "You're making an awful lot of money here. Let's triple the rent." So I said, no. So we went around the corner and bought a piece of property over on Kimball Bridge Road. And we were there until, I guess, about 1983 or something like that. And at that time, the real estate agents kept knocking on the door and saying, "You really need to sell this. We'd like to develop it." And I said, no, we're going to build a home here. We're going to live here forever and ever. And they did that several times. And so one day my mom said, "Why don't you just ask them what kind of money they're talking about?" So the guy, next time he came, I asked him, and he told me, and I said, "It's yours." So,
and what year was that?
That would have been 1980, about 1983, I guess it was. And so, or 84 probably. And so we sold that business. And then we had an interior landscape business where we took care of plants, green plants for offices, restaurants, hotels, things like that. And we had about 60 accounts around the metropolitan area. And then one day my wife said, "I just think it'd be so much fun to have a little flower shop." And neither of us had ever been in the flower business at all. So we saw this piece of property. It's at 52 North Main Street, which is now the Mez Spa. Okay. And we saw that piece of property for sale, and we made an offer on it. And next thing we knew, we owned it, and we were in the flower business.
Now, I know today you know quite a bit of flowers. Yeah. So were you one of those that you didn't know about being a florist, but you've always kind of had a green thumb, you and Margot?
Yeah, both of us had. I was born and raised on a farm in Iowa, so I have a real background with plants. And, and we always had big gardens and flowers, and my grandma's always had gardens and flowers and stuff.
I just figured you saying you know nothing about flowers versus when I say I know nothing about flowers are very different.
Okay, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we had a little background, but as far as running a florist shop or profit and loss or anything like that, had no idea. And so we had that for about 18 years, and then the last 3 years we had the property was like a pretty good sized lot, and so this thanks to the city, they did a grant program where if 2 or more property owners would agree to share parking, then the city would help pay for a parking lot. So Richard, Devin, and myself paired up, and we put a parking lot together with our 3 properties. And so at that time, then we built another building behind it, which is now Flatlands, Bourbon and Bayou.
That is my favorite I don't know if it's even considered a new restaurant still, but that is still one of my favorite additions.
They really do it well, don't they?
They do. They do.
I've been very happy with them, and they're great tenants too. So
along that time that you've been in downtown Alpharetta, I was trying to look it up, but you can tell me, is you joined what is now known as the Alpharetta Business Association,
right?
And you were probably a key stakeholder in the starting of that.
What happened in about 1993, and this is, I think, what really prompted this is when the mall came in about 1993, and there were a handful of business owners downtown who we welcomed the mall, but at the same time we knew that it was gonna hurt our downtown, and so we started seeing the downtown business really slowed down. I mean, and it became pretty much of a ghost town. So there were a handful of us. I think there was about 5 or 6 of us got together, and we started the Downtown Alpharetta Business Association, which was DABA, and we came up. It's pretty interesting. We've got some old clippings from things that we did for newsletters, and so we had a vision at that time of some of the things we wanted. And I always tell people the greatest story is that Frances Byers, who owns the Cotton House at the time, she was real active with it, and Bob Burgess and Jim Parsons and myself. And anyway, Frances and I we said, what we need in this downtown is a grand hotel. We just need, that would be the keystone to making this thing work. And so we always joked about someday we'll have one. And so here it is. That was Frances's property, the Cotton House. And so now that's where the new hotel is supposed to go downtown.
That's right. So that'll be a nice little piece for the historic side of downtown Alpharetta, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I'm real excited about that. So so that's kind of how we got started, and at that time we did have a vision for the city.
Well, you brought up something. I think that's something worth discussing a little bit more. Is the Downtown Alpharetta Business Association was formed because you needed to have a plan because the new North Point Mall was coming in.
Right.
And I think that's interesting that you fast forward 25 years from now, and Avalon has come in, and historic downtown is being spruced up, City Center, and now North Point Mall is saying, okay, we got to come up with a plan because we have new competition. And I think that's neat how it bounces out and plays back and forth. And Alpharetta keeps going through evolutionary cycles of saying, let's keep improving on what we have.
And I hadn't thought about that, but that is a good point, because it's kind of like the whole thing has turned completely. That's 180 degrees, because we were crying about them, now they're crying about us for downtown.
That's right. And so what were the biggest challenges or obstacles that you all wanted to overcome in 1993?
Well, prior to that, prior to that, when the mall came, we had it was really a vibrant downtown, believe it or not. We had a hardware store, we had 3 grocery stores, we had welding shops, we had tire stores, and several antique shops. And so it was a pretty active little town for its time. I mean, there was only about maybe 3,000 or 4,000 people here, but it was pretty active. But then when the mall came and the big box stores and the strip malls and stuff like that, it just took the sap out of downtown. Mm-hmm. And so at the time we said, we came up with different ideas of what we could do, and we didn't have the vision of what it is today, but we knew that we needed to do something. And so as a result, we just came up with different ideas about it's pretty funny, because one of those newsletters back in 1993, we talked about a parking deck. And we didn't even have enough business to have a parking deck, but we felt like we needed a parking deck. So
I know for a fact you can never start too early in talking about parking now. Yeah. So I think it's good that y'all were bringing that up back then.
Yeah. Well, and now we've definitely, I think you guys have done a great job of addressing that. The city has done well. I think we're well underway for that.
I would agree. I think we've got to make sure that they have a place to park so they can get to, and then after that, leave the cars and enjoy what they have around.
Right. And I think that, we were up at the city center on Sunday afternoon, which was probably one of the first really pretty days we've had. And I was amazed at the number of people just walking around downtown. Like we would never, and back in 93, nobody walked around downtown. It was, just didn't happen. So that was how we got started with Downtown Alpharetta Business Association. They were together for probably about 6 years. And then there was a lot of internal conflict kind of dealing with the city and different things. And so then that disbanded, the Downtown Alpharetta Business Association disband.
Okay.
So then in 2004, myself and Paul Frank and Kathy Kessler and Clark Savage, the four of us, this is after we opened up our coffee house where Flatlands is now. We got together. Those guys were pretty regulars, and we started talking one day, and we said, we really need to form another business association to, move this city forward, because then there wasn't a lot going on. So that's when we started the Downtown Alpharetta Trade Association, and that was James Drinkard helped us with that a lot. He was really instrumental in getting us off the ground. And that's when we really started coming up with the ideas for a downtown master plan, the idea that, and one of the things that we felt like was lacking with the other one was that we wanted to have a really good relationship with the city, the mayor, the council. And that's one of the things I think was lacking the last time, that they were too adversarial. And so we said, hey, we need to be able to work with the city. And I think we've done a good job of that. And so that's how, that was kind of the focus of our organization.
So is that when the plans, I know that the city center concept was over multiple years and multiple council administrations.
Yes.
And so is that when that was started, saying maybe we need to talk about having more of a city center approach?
Yes, exactly. That was in 2003. And that's when the city hired the Sizemore Group. And they were the first ones that drew up this original plan. And I can remember going to some of these meetings, and when it was kind of like a napkin drawing, but we knew that we needed a city center. And they told us, they said, once the city center comes, this is going to be the magnet. And they pointed out all these different places, and it looked like mixed use projects that were going to come around it. And they said, and we were like, how's that going to happen? And they said, just trust us, it will. All the city needs to do is get the city center together, and these things will happen. And so that was about 2003. And then shortly after that, we started, getting the ball going forward. And then felt like it was going to be forever and ever. And we got very frustrated with the city because we felt like they weren't moving fast enough, and they weren't really business friendly. We didn't think they were business friendly. And so anyway, as it evolved, you can see how it is today.
Yeah. And
then the Downtown Alpharetta Trade Association operated as that until 2011, I guess it was. And then that's when some of the members of the board decided that they wanted to, the focus there was for downtown. Some of the members of the board for Downtown Alpharetta Trade Association wanted to expand it and make it be a bigger, and not dealing just with downtown. And so then that's when they changed the name to the Alpharetta Business Association. And then that encompasses a lot of businesses, just throughout the entire area. So that's kind of where we are now with that.
So as a group, when did you start? Because one of the things I really appreciate about the Alpharetta Business Association is how you all act as welcoming ambassadors for Alpharetta, and specifically for the downtown Alpharetta area.
Yeah.
So you're known for your events and bringing people to the you had to give them reasons to come downtown in order to get them there. Now people are coming organically, like you're saying. They're spending their Sundays there.
Yes.
But when did that start happening, that you had your events like the Brew Moon Fest and working towards other things to get them downtown?
I'm thinking that was probably 2008, 2010, somewhere around in there. I'm thinking maybe it's probably been about 8 or 9 years. And that was kind of our focus, that we realized that, hey, we need to get people here. And it's pretty funny because I kind of still remember we were sitting up in front of, or up above the Colonial Bank, and we used to meet up there. And I remember Richard Devon was there, and I can't remember some of the other people, Stacy from the Queen of Hearts, and Donald Mitchell. And so we all were saying, what could we do to bring people in? And people said, well, everybody likes to drink beer. Yeah, that's good. And everybody likes music. We said, we said, let's have a big, street fest. And so that's when we came up with the idea of doing something. And so we ended up calling it the Brew Moon Fest. And initially it was just going to be in the fall. And then now they've added it in June and summer, September. Yeah. So, and it's been a great event for the people.
It's a great event, and I also think it showcases at that time what Alpharetta could be.
Yes.
And so for the people that maybe need a little bit more prodding of saying, why would we invest into a city center?
Yes.
this is why.
Yeah.
This becomes a hub. This becomes the gathering place for Alpharetta.
Yeah.
And building a development that's conducive to that would be very helpful and continue to make it even better. So my hat's off to the group. I've always, when I came here in 2010, and y'all were one of the first groups that I joined, and
Right.
knew you, Richard Devon, and I was on design review board with Richard Devon, so I sat next to him, which is he's hysterical because we're in design review board, and Richard's an architect for the listeners, so he'd be with his pencils writing out what the building should look like according to him as a commissioner. I was like, we can't do that. We judge what they give us. We don't do the homework for them. But Richard's great. Steve Manley also was one that I was involved with on committee work, and the love and passion that you had for downtown, that you wanted to share it to all of Alpharetta and to greater North Fulton, I think was really beneficial to us to help us move towards what we see today.
Yes.
So my hat's off to y'all as a group for that.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. And I remember one of the first times that you and I worked together, and it was when we were on the, and I think I can't remember what we called that committee, but it was downtown development or something. But I remember several times we would walk with James Drinkard and Pete over in engineering, and we would walk down the street and we'd point out things that were problems. Like, the landscape was absolutely, it was abysmal. It was terrible. And sidewalks were uneven and stuff. And we pointed out things like that and different things that we felt like could make it better.
I love that too. So when I told y'all, and I knew most of y'all on a personal level, so I was like, I'm going to run for council.
Yeah.
So I had to be on the other end of one of those tours as a candidate with y'all, which was, it was fun, and y'all were great. But I was like, I still have my task list from when I first said I was going to join council, and I want to say I'm still trying to get those utilities underground. It's a lot harder than I thought, but the improvements, you're right, with what we are seeing with the parking deck. I know parking was a big issue at the time. We're adding the parking as much as we can. Another thing is the sanitation services, because when we build something new like Avalon, we can properly plan for everything that's going to be a development. We're doing that now. But one thing I've seen over the past couple of years, which is a testament to the work of our friend, council member Donald Mitchell, and the ABA and the Arts Alpharetta group, which you're part of all three, is seeing the artwork around downtown. What do you think about that? About how it's been and what we could add?
It's really exciting, and I have to give the city credit for it too, and I think that Kathy Cook needs to be commended for her work with it. And one of the things that she is, I think that was her brainchild, part of it at least, was to ask developers when they're doing a development to put sculpture around. And so we're seeing a lot of that. Matter of fact, there's a new one right now. It's called the Trio. It's over off of Windward Parkway. There's a big developments going in there. I can't remember the name of it, but it's got a hotel. It's a mixed use project. And Charlie Smith, who's a well-known sculptor in the area, he's done things on the Beltline, he's done things for Bonnaroo, and so he has one over there called the Trio, and it kind of looks like a lighthouse. So if you haven't had a chance to see it, you really need to go over there and see it. It's really, really cool. So, but that's one of those things where the developer was, they laid out $70,000 for this thing and didn't bat an eye because they felt the importance of it for the city. They knew that it was a good thing. So we're seeing a lot more of that. And so when we can get developers to buy into this, it's really great because, it just makes the city look great.
So, and what I appreciate about the art program too is it's done by a select group within Arts Alpharetta. So they're picking it out as opposed to government staff or elected officials picking it out, which it ends up being safer art, which it doesn't give you a negative reaction, but it doesn't necessarily give you the positive reaction either. I think when you're walking like a museum or any kind of gallery, you walk by and you say, I really like that piece.
Yes.
Other pieces you're like, not so much for me.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm seeing here in Alpharetta. I mean, there's a few pieces that I really like and make me think, and then there's ones that I'm like, oh, that's nice, but not for me.
Yeah.
But the spectrum of the pieces that are being picked, and then I guess they're going to go through a rotation of being there for a couple years for a lot of them, and then move on with the ones in the public spaces, not necessarily the ones that are at private development.
Yeah, the ones for Miscellany, which is the name of the project that we did last year, and it was supposed to end in January, and now we've extended that one until June, and then there will be a new one. And I think last year we had 6 pieces. This year we're hoping to have 10, maybe 12 pieces. And some of them will be going to the same location, some will be in different locations. But I'm real excited about this. And you're absolutely right. It's funny because one day I was standing up there and next to some of the sculptures, and I heard some guy come up and he was talking about this, the one that's it's like a bumper off a car, a fender off a car, and it's kind of twisted and gnarly, and it looks like a bumper off a car. And the guy says, "Oh," he says, "that's horrible." He said, "They call that art. That's just a wrecked up old bumper." And so then a few weeks later, I guess it was, I was over there, and I was listening to somebody else, and they're talking about, that's pretty cool because, you're hearing all these cars and all this traffic and stuff, and then you can kind of see how this could fit in. And I thought it's pretty interesting because everybody has a different perspective on every piece of art, and some they do like and some of them they hate. So
some are growing on me too, like the A in front of Coalition.
Yeah.
I first drove by that the first few times. I was like, oh my goodness, how long are we going to keep that one? But every time I drive by it, I like it more and more, and it's gone to a positive for me too. So it's all been interesting. I think the bear for me at Brook Street Park is my favorite.
Oh, yes.
And it's my favorite of the family too. Our entire family like it.
I know, and all my grandkids, when they come, they always love it too. And we have to thank Janet Rogers from the Alpharetta Convention and Visitors Bureau for purchasing that now. So that'll be a permanent piece for us. So that's pretty exciting. But when you were talking about the A in front of Coalition, Coalition.
Coalition,
yeah. We knew at the time, and I remember Diana Schmiel and she had met with the Jacksons, and they were real excited. They thought it was going to be really great, and we were kind of like, ooh, I don't know. When we first saw the rendering of it, we said, we don't know if Alpharetta's ready for this or not. But put it in perspective, I think it really is. I think it's good because it gives us a little, especially the west side of town, gives it a little bit of a funky vibe. So I think
gives
it's
it a kick
cool.
in the pants that it needs.
Yeah.
I think so. I like it now. It's up there now as one of my favorite pieces. But when I first saw it, I was like, I don't know how this is going to turn out. And he worked on it for about a week, right? For a few days, and then I kept seeing it more. And it's like always going with different styles on each side of the A, but no, it looks really good.
Well, I think it's great. And you mentioned something earlier that kind of made me think about. You're talking about burying the underground utilities, and I do hope at some point that Milton Avenue, and this goes clear back to 1993 when we first started talking about that. We realized that Milton Avenue was really ugly with all the utilities. They're really bad. And so, and I know that there were a couple times where the city almost pulled the trigger on doing something. I remember when Richard from who was the community development? McLeod, yeah. And I know that was one of the things that he was pushing very hard for. And so we didn't pull the trigger on it, but I hope that someday we will see that.
I'm working on it, I promise you.
Okay.
But no, I think it's going to come up as things get redeveloped more, and then it works for Georgia Power and working with them. So it'll come up there, and I think it's completely agreed that it needs to be part of the streetscape refinishing of it. So So would love to get your advice for people listening to this podcast, because what I really enjoy about you is you see opportunity within your community, or you see opportunity within something that gives you joy, like art or like downtown Alpharetta, and you try to make it work to show people your vision.
Yes.
So if somebody has an idea of what they'd like to accomplish, what's your advice for them if it's not out there right now?
Get involved. And I remember this goes back to our previous mayor, Mayor Belle-Isle, and there was a book that was written, it's called Love Your City. And he was always all about that to fall in love with your city. And I've been here long enough now that, I absolutely love Alpharetta. When I go, I'm a great ambassador. No matter where I go, I say Alpharetta is the best place on the earth, And in my little world, it is the best place on earth. But to tell people that, to get involved and become part of the city. And I always tell people, I said that, if you have an opportunity, you can make things happen. And I feel like that because of the passion I've had and the vision that I've had, some of the things that I see happen around or because I was involved enough to make it happen.
Absolutely right.
And I know that James Drinkard always laughs about the stream that's up in Brook Street Park. And when we were doing our little vignettes around, that was one of the things that I said I really wanted to happen. I said, ideally what I wanted to do is have it go all the way down Thompson Street over to Avalon. But I said, I think we need to have some big water feature in there, which would be a stream. And so Eric Bozeman was working with... I can't remember the name of the company at the time that helped develop it.
Kimley Horn, right?
Kimley Horn, yes. And I remember at the time he said, Larry, he says, we're going to have that in there for you. And so I was real excited. So that's the kind of thing, if you do have any kind of ideas, get involved with the city. I'm on the planning commission, which was an appointment of Donald Mitchell for doing that. But if you don't make a decision, you don't have any reason to bitch about things. And that's kind of the way I look at it, is that, like, if you don't like something, it's your fault. You can make changes. You can go in and get involved and make things happen.
Well, I would agree. I mean, my history with Alpharetta has been as a father. So we moved here and we started our family, and that's how I became passionate about it, because I wanted to make sure it was a great place for my kids to grow up, and
Yes.
that it had pieces of what I had when I grew up.
Yes.
So I grew up in a similar area that when I was in elementary school age, it was a 5,000 person town.
Yeah.
And it's grown just like Alpharetta to 8,000 people currently. But no, it still stayed small.
Yeah.
But Alpharetta still has that small town perspective that people love and feel that
Yes.
you can get to know your neighbor pretty quickly.
Yes.
And I wanted to make sure that happened. And I always felt that it doesn't matter how long you've been there or what you have, but you can make a difference right away. And you can be a part of changing it to something that you'd like to see.
Yes.
And the Alpharetta Business Association's always been open to that.
Yeah.
And they've had bigger pushes of what they want to have, but trying to make it their own in a hometown feel.
Yes, and I think you're right. And I do remember when you first moved here, that was one of the things that you said, and that you're right. It is an ideal little town to raise children in. And I think, we have to give a lot of credit, I think, to the city and the city staff for the vision they had when it came to the downtown master plan, that with the things that we put in as far as zoning and stuff like that, as far as the density.
Your planning commission hat's coming on now.
Yeah,
no, go ahead.
It is.
Sorry.
But it kind of bothers me, because there are people who talk about density, and I'm the biggest proponent of density in the world, but density, that good density. And
Correct.
we have to have density. I tell people all the time that, as a matter of fact, I met with some people yesterday at the farmers market, and they were talking about how are all these restaurants going to survive here? And I said, it's because of density. You have to have people living within a close enough proximity that they can go support all these businesses. And so I always tell people, they say, well, we got too much density. And I'm going, this is not density. Sandy Springs is density. When you have 40-story apartment buildings, that's density. But in Alpharetta, as far as and I know apartments is a topic that nobody probably wants to talk about a lot, but I think that the plan that we put in, we've got restrictions to 4 stories for apartments. They can only be in mixed use. And so I think that with that in mind, we'll never get to that point where we have 40-story apartment buildings like Sandy Springs or anything like that. So, I like that idea that we have to be careful that if we restrict it too much and say we can't have density, then a lot of these businesses will not survive.
I think that's a good point. And that's the Planning Commission's been a good group, I think, of balanced individuals with
Yes.
great perspectives, and it's a good group to have for when these applications have come before Planning Commission and then come before Council. And I've always enjoyed our conversations together, because I do think that we agree on having balanced growth.
Right.
And then there might be a little bit of a difference on spectrum of how much, but my concern is always making sure that our infrastructure can hold what everyone's asking for. So when things are happening, do we have enough? So are those roads enough so that Thompson Street as an example,
Yeah.
that people can get to and from. And is there enough parking in those areas? Because the city's been very proactive on making sure that there's places to park and then that they can walk around.
Right.
But then we want to make sure that it's safe so that vehicles are not trying to get squeezed in to Thompson Street, and then does that hurt the pedestrian friendliness? And so it's those kind of things that I think it's great that we have a balanced group working together,
Right.
and trying to get to a consensus opinion on it. And a lot of it goes back to our conversation our conversation today shows that it's been generations of councils and of business leaders working together to get here. So it was in 93 at 2000 where you first started having that master plan idea of city center.
Yes.
And then it took a few years to get the parcelage, and then it's great to see that where it's going to be. Well, and hopefully how it grows into something even more spectacular, because you got city center, but then now I think the west side of downtown, with what we're seeing with the hotel, the school, on the other side, we're not done yet.
No.
Downtown Alpharetta.
No, we're definitely not.
So my last thing, so your latest project, and I think you're coming back to it. You've already been a part of it, and you're back again. Is the Alpharetta Farmers Market?
Right. Yes. The Alpharetta Farmers Market. This is a pretty interesting story. That in 2004. There were a handful of us in the Alpharetta Business Association who said, you know what Alpharetta really needs is a farmer's market. And so we had, none of us had any experience about a farmer's market. So we decided on Saturday morning we would just have a little farmer's market. So the first week we had 6 vendors, and my wife and I were 2 of them. I had the coffee shop, so we had coffee and scones, and then my wife had flowers from the flower shop, and that was 2 of our booths. And there were 4 other people there. One of them was salsa, and one of them was beef jerky and something else. So that's how it kind of started in 2004. And we were over in the parking lot behind Smoke Jacks, where they have the food trucks now. That was our first location.
Oh, okay. So that was the first spot.
Yeah. And that worked well. And we had that for a few years. And then we decided that we needed to move. And I can't remember why we moved, but we moved across the street over to the old parking lot, which is now the town green. And at that point, there was a gas station, used to be a gas station there, and that was torn down. And then it was just a big asphalt parking lot, just a horrible place for a farmer's market. But we were there for several years. I can't remember what year we ended up moving over to Canton Street, or Old Canton Street. And I think that was we've been over there maybe 5 years or something like that. So anyway, we went from those 6 vendors, and then today, as a matter of fact, I counted it up this morning, we have 77 vendors so far for this year that we have places for. Actually, we have 88 vendors, but we moved to the city center, and with what they've given us now, we got North and South Broad Street, and we have one side of Market Street, and that gives us 83 spaces. And some of the vendors take 2 and 3 spaces. So we are maxed out already. We've asked the city and Sherry Morris to be able to use the Commerce Street, which is kind of in front of Kilwins, and what else is over there? I don't know.
The Chiringo, right?
No, the
apartments.
Restaurant. It's over. It's where the new barbershop is.
I see.
And the IKEA Bowl, all along there. So both there. So
right in front of City Hall.
Yes, in front of City Hall on either side. So if we can get that will give us about 20 more spaces. So ideally, and we had 3 more applications come in today, so they're coming in. So we'd like to have about 110 spaces this year. So if we can, that would
Sherry didn't know what she was getting into when you started heading up the train on that one.
Yeah, well, Sherry's been pretty good to work with, and it was pretty fun. We met with all, and I was really surprised. We had a meeting one morning, and because she wanted us to talk to the merchants in there, and I think every single merchant except 2 in the city center were at that meeting, and they were all very excited about it, because we told them, we said, that because some of them were a little bit concerned initially that we're going to be setting up your tent right in front of my store, and so we were telling that how many Saturday mornings are you going to get 2,000 to 3,000 people walk in front of your store? And so I told them, I said, serve mimosas or some kind of cocktails and get people in your store. So.
Well, it's similar to what happened with the food truck alley.
Right. Yes.
It's the increased traffic. It helps everybody.
Everybody. Yeah. And I know that at that time, there were a lot of the restaurants that were very concerned about food trucks. And now, if you go into the restaurants on Thursday night, they're packed. So it's really.
So where can people find out more about the Alpharetta Farmers Market?
We have a website. It's called alpharettafarmersmarket.com, and you can get the information there. The first market this year will be April 13th, and it's from 8:30 in the morning till 1, and we will have it every weekend except Memorial Weekend, because that's when we have the Art Street Fest. So they will be setting up on the city center. So we won't have it that weekend, but we will have it this year for the first time on Old Soldiers Day.
Okay.
Because usually we don't have it then, but this year we're going to have it. So it's a great market. We've won. Appen has given us the award for the last 6 years.
Appen didn't give it to you. Y'all earned it.
Earned it.
That's
Okay,
right.
Yeah. You're right. We did. So, but it's really fun. We've got some great vendors this year, and it's going to be a great time. So.
Well, good. I'm excited. I'm glad the weather's breaking so we can have some nice weather for you.
Yeah.
Want to thank you for joining me on the show. Thank you for being a happy warrior for Alpharetta and always sharing your ideas and taking charge with it, and then also being a great ambassador for Alpharetta.
Thank you. I enjoy it, and thanks for the opportunity to share my vision and my thoughts for it, because I always love to. I mean, I know sometimes I wear people's ears out when I talk to them, because I just tell them how much I love this city, but there's so much to love. It's a great city.
Well, I tell you this, and I tell anybody, it's when people say they have an idea and they want to roll up their sleeves with you and get to work. Yeah. That makes a difference.
Absolutely.
And you're one of those people. So you're worth listening to.
Thank you.
But you always have great ideas.
Thank you.
And so with that, thank you for joining me on North Fulton Serves. Be sure to tune in every Thursday for a new episode anywhere you listen to podcasts. Please be sure to rate our show, look for us on YouTube, and you can follow me on Twitter and Facebook at Jason Binder. Thanks for listening.
Cool.
That was fun.
That was fun.